I so wish my mom was in the audience to hear that introduction. Jeff, right back at you, pal. I don't think there's anyone who could have brought this vision to reality like you have. And just congratulations to you, to Eric, to Nikhil, to the entire Elevate team. Just extraordinary. Just really extraordinary. All right, let's jump in. My goal here, get this clicker working is my goal. We were saying at Singularity University, AV is hard. AI is easy, AV is hard. There we go. We're living during the most extraordinary time ever in human history, period. There's no other time I'd rather be alive. It's a time where each and every one of us have the power of heads of nations just 20, 30 years ago. And we honestly forget how powerful we are, right? When we have 6 or 7 cell phones strewn in our drawer because we forgot to give them to somebody, and we forget that those devices were something the KGB or NIA or CIA would have killed for just 20 years ago. Supercomputers in your pocket. As I go and I speak to people, one of the ideas that stood out in my head was a conversation I had with a CEO in the Valley who said, people have no idea how fast the world is really progressing. And I don't think we do. We have an understanding in one particular narrow field, but we have no idea how fast all of these things are moving because of the convergence and the enabling and the intersection and the number of people coming online to do this. One of my favorite sayings is that the best way to predict the future is to create it yourself. And I think that's what Jeff and all of you have been doing. You've been predicting a future of aerial ride sharing, let's get the name right, and creating it yourself at this point. So all of this fundamental, extraordinary explosion that's going on right now really is underwritten by computation and Moore's law. Right, here's Gordon Moore, who in 1958 starts Intel. By 1965, notices something, publishes a paper, and he says, at Intel, we've noticed something. Number of transistors in a piece of silicon have roughly doubled every 12 to 24 months, and it's likely to continue. And it did, and it has for 50 years. But none of us understand how truly fast it's moving. So this is a first integrated circuit, a horizontal and vertical transistor back in 1958, and this is Intel's first commercial product. The 4004 in 1971, 2300 transistors, about $1 each. But let's fast forward to roughly today. So this is the Core i7 with 14.4 billion transistors, less than a millionth of a penny each. And the number is staggering, right? This is something that's 330 billion-fold better. And there's no way for us to even fathom what that really means. But yet, that's what's enabling everything here we have today. This massive computational growth. Another way to look at it is this. In 1956, this was a 5-megabyte hard drive for $120,000. And if you happen to have your Uber Elevate, you could move it from office to office. We noticed this, right? This is a SanDisk card, 128 megabits, 25 times more memory, 1,000 times cheaper. But did we notice when this happened? When 9 years later, right on schedule on Moore's law, it's 128 gigabytes, 1,000 times better for the same price. But it doesn't stop there, right? Now it's a terabyte for something you can lose in your pocket. And if you do the analysis, it's a 10 trillion-fold price performance increase. But yet we don't notice this stuff. And that's what's so amazing and so exciting. We're living in a world where we don't really realize how fast the world is changing. And I'm saying this because, yeah, flying cars are finally here. One day we wake up, Jeff and I were talking about doing an XPRIZE in the flying car area, and then when we looked at it, it said, there's enough companies working on this already, it's too late. You don't need an XPRIZE. It's happening already. Something gelled instantly, came together, the technologies converged. So this is from Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Near. I'm proud to be his co-founder, executive founder for Singularity University. And here you can see computational power over 110 years. It's curving upwards on a log scale. It tells me at the rate at which computers are getting faster is itself getting faster. And when it continues, what you see going forward the next century is nothing short of extraordinary, unfathomable. In 8 years' time, or actually in 5 years' time, $1,000 down at Best Buy, if they're still around, is now buying you the computational power of the human brain. And then 25 years later, now $1,000 is buying you the computational power of the entire human race. But that's only half the story, because 2018 is the year we're supposed to hit quantum supremacy, right? The year in which a quantum computer demonstrates it can solve a problem that no classical computer can solve. And what is coming out of that is breakthroughs we haven't seen yet in material sciences, the material genome, in the ability to create new drugs, a massive uptick in machine learning, all of these things impacting, if you would, the future that you're here to create. So we've got these inflection points coming. But faster, cheaper computing power is the oxygen in the room. It's the foundation on the ground upon which all these other exponentials are built. AI, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology, AR, VR, blockchain, all of these things. And many of you are experts in one or two of these, but it's the recombination of 3 or 4 that are creating new business models. And it's the business models that, for me, it's the most exciting part of my life. The sharing economy, what Uber represents. So Jeff mentioned this. I talk a lot about the fact that scarcity is an old world concept. If you're building your business based on scarcity, it will end. It will fail. We're heading towards a world of abundance. Technology is the force that takes what used to be scarce and makes it abundant over and over again. I had a chance to write this book, and if you look over the last 100 years, if you look at the numbers and look at the data, the per capita income for every nation on this planet has more than tripled. The lifespan has more than doubled. We're going to double it again. The cost of food has dropped 30-fold. Energy's dropped 50-fold. Transportation, hundreds of fold. Communications, millions of fold. And people don't realize how we're creating abundance. I mean, one of the best examples I have in the Valley, a friend of mine has built a machine about the size of a small refrigerator. You put electricity, water, and methane in one end, and out the other end comes perfect diamonds. How big would you like it? 6 carats, 8 carats, 10 carats? Would you like flaws or color? You can add those things. Again, the notion that something that used to be scarce, we were taught by De Beers that diamonds are scarce, they're rare. Yeah, maybe, maybe not. So the question is, what do you think of as truly scarce? Energy, we live on a planet bathed in energy. 8,000 times more energy hits the surface of the Earth than we consume as a species in a year. We have a squanderable abundance of energy. Water, we have an XPRIZE going on right now in India, funded by Ratan Tata, to award the team that can take 2,000 liters of water out of the atmosphere and give it to a village at 2 cents a liter. Right? Half the disease burden on the planet Earth is due to unclean drinking water. Health and learning, both of those are going to be delivered the best possible by an AI, right? The health and education of the poorest child and the son or daughter of a billionaire will be completely equalized by AI. Money, we got more capital than ever before. Sovereign wealth funds flowing in. $8 billion in ICOs coming out. Resources, well, maybe if you look at the Earth as the only form of a resource, but the Earth is a crumb in a solar system filled with resources. And then there's time. And I think what Uber Elevate, Uber Air represents more than anything else is buying back time. Right? I'm a pilot. I'll fly myself whenever I can just to save that hour at LAX. Just to save that hour. Buying back time. We're all born with the same 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week. Your wealth, your prosperity is what you can do with that time. And it's the most precious of all the things that are not yet abundant. So what I show and what I teach at Singularity University and to the entrepreneurs that I serve is whatever you digitize enters a period of slow, deceptive growth, right? That first 3D printer was started 34 years ago, but it was in very slow, deceptive growth. And all of a sudden it becomes disruptive. And it dematerializes, demonetizes, and democratizes products and services, right? This is dematerialization. 20 years later, all of these things fit in your pocket. Right? That's why Radio Shack has gone away. In one sense, Uber is dematerializing the car, at least my car. And then there's demonetization. demonetizing the cost of transportation, Amazon Books, Skype, long distance, Craigslist decimated the classifieds, took the money out of the newspapers' pockets, put it back into your pockets. Whatever we dematerialize, make into ones and zeros, and then demonetize, the advantage is we can democratize, right? We can now serve 1 billion people on the planet, and Jeff mentioned it, the best way to become a billionaire is help 1 billion people. The world's biggest problems are the world's biggest business opportunities. It's an extraordinary time to be. So let's talk about a few of the implications of exponentials. The first is energy abundance. I mentioned this. There's 8,000 times more energy hitting the surface of the Earth than we consume as a species in a year, and it's coming to roost right here, right now. Here are the numbers last year. The price of coal in 2017, 5 to 6 cents per kilowatt hour. And for solar, in Mexico at 2.7 cents per kilowatt hour. In Dubai and Abu Dhabi at 2.4 cents. The projection is we'll hit under a penny per kilowatt hour within the next 7 to 8 years. Well, do we have the battery storage? We've been talking about batteries a lot, right? So GIGAFACTORY online producing more capacity this year than any place else on the planet. But what's interesting, it's not just that one gigafactory, right? There are 10 additional gigafactories under construction. And I give this only as an example. There's lots of other places batteries are going to be made, but the estimate, at least that Elon put forward, was that 100 gigafactories supply 100% of the battery needs of the planet. So I just want to put into context the notion that we're making a dent. And besides all of that, it's the fact that every major car company is investing heavily. The amount of capital flowing into this area is extraordinary. And then when you look at sort of where we are today in this battery curve, Tesla has blown away the predictions. The EIA, the Energy Information Administration, that yellow line is the government's prediction. And of course, thank God we don't depend on them for building our batteries. It's dropped twice as fast as the optimists predicted. I don't think batteries are the limiting factor. Let's talk about connection on the planet. And for me, this is like one of the most amazing things no one is talking about. This is huge. We are about to connect the entire planet at a level that has never before been really conceived of. So next year, we're beginning to test and roll out 5G, right? My friends at Qualcomm, we've been working on this and building it. Incredible. Imagine being able to download a movie on your phone in a fraction of a second, 10 to 100 gigabit connection speeds. But it's not just that, right? It's Zuckerberg with drones and satellites. It's Google with balloons and satellites. It's Paul Jacobs and Greg Weiler and Richard Branson with $1.2 billion of Masa's money from SoftBank, deploying a 900 satellite constellation around the world. And then on top of that, you've got SpaceX with a 4,000 satellite constellation. And if that's not enough, another 7,000 satellite layer down below that to deliver a gigabit connection speed to every single human on the planet, right? I mean, if you think about it, back in 2010, 8 years ago, 1.8 billion people were connected, a quarter of the world. Last year, half the world, 3.8 billion people connected. In the next 5 to 7 years, we're going to connect every single human on planet Earth. Not like you and I got connected at 9600 baud on AOL, all right? Come on, admit it. Being connected at a gigabit with access to the world's knowledge on Google or Baidu, with access to the ability to have, quantum computing on the cloud or AI on the cloud or to spin up 3D printers on the cloud. So we're about to have 4.2 billion new minds who've never been connected before come online in the next 5 or 6 years. That is extraordinary, right? What are these people going to invent, desire, upload, download, create? It represents tens of trillions of dollars flowing in the global economy. And for me, it also represents this massive inflection point of innovation. We haven't seen anything yet when we start to have that many people coming online with tools that were only available at the biggest corporations and the biggest universities before. But it's not just people being connected, right? 2015, we had 15 billion people, 15 billion things connected. By 2020, the projection is 50 billion with 1 trillion sensors. 10 years later, 500 billion with 100 trillion sensors, where everything, all the time, everywhere is being sensed and connected. We're heading towards a world where you're going to be able to know anything you want, anytime you want, anywhere you want, layer upon layer upon layer of sensing information, where it's more important the question you ask than what you know, right? Hundreds of satellites imaging the planet at sub-meter resolution. My friends at AirMap, helping navigate millions of drones around the planet, understanding what's going on in those drones, imaging the planet at centimeter or millimeter resolution. Autonomous cars, with 700 megabytes per second of data coming off those LiDARs, imaging everything on every road everywhere, and AR glasses with forward-looking lenses. I mean, everything is going to be imaged. Nothing you do will be secret. That's another whole conversation. But let's not go there. I do have to tell my 7-year-old boys that make sure whatever they do, it's legal, because it's going to be captured on video, and I just say, thank God it wasn't like that when I was a kid. Let's talk about the implications of manufacturing. Manufacturing is a big deal here. This is a future Uber employee being manufactured. But there has been, we've talked about 3D printing briefly, and we went through sort of a 3D printing hype cycle. But the technology is here, and it's panning out. Right? $32 billion industry by 2023, $14, $15 billion in sales by 2019, 4,200 startups in the last year, patent filings increasing at 225% per annum. It's extraordinary. Question is, will we have the technology to build what Jeff and Eric and Nikhil were talking about, which is, what was the B-24? It was one produced every 63 minutes to, in Jeff's words, to blow that out of the water. Well, it's going to be technology like this. This is a startup called Orbital Composites, 100-fold faster 3D printing in carbon composites. But at the end of the day, the real revolution in manufacturing is going to come from breakthroughs in quantum and material genome, are the ability to discover new materials that we've never discovered that are theoretically possible because we can understand the adjacencies of our existing materials, or visualization techniques in AR and VR, or maybe it's 4.2 billion people with the tools to create new materials and new manufacturing processes coming out of places we would have never expected before. Or maybe it's the whole idea of generative design, where you get machine learning to come in and lightweight your car or your airplane and make it look alien in shape, but super light and just as strong. But ultimately, we're here to predict the future. And I love this. The best way to predict the future is create it yourself. So I grew up with this as my future. Right? I was passionate about space. It was something I wanted to do. I wanted to become an astronaut. Then I found out that the chances of becoming an astronaut, 1 in 1,000. And then if you got selected, half the astronauts have never flown. They're called penguins because they have wings, but they don't fly. And then I know I shared this with Jeff. There was this scientific documentary that came out called Star Trek that showed us our future. And this inspired me. And the realization was, this is the future, that when you have a dream, you don't give up. When you have a massively transformative purpose, when you have a moonshot, you don't ever, ever, ever give up. And for me, that moonshot of wanting to go into space translated itself into the XPRIZE. I was reading Lindbergh's book called Spirit of St. Louis, and he crossed the Atlantic in 1927 to win a $25,000 prize. And I said, I'm going to create a prize for private spaceflight. It's going to be $10 million for the first ship that could be built that carries 3 adults to 100 kilometers twice in 2 weeks. Incredibly, we had 26 teams from 7 countries around the world who spent $100 million going after that. I saw my good friend George Whitesides, who now runs Virgin Galactic. Richard came in and and bought the winning technology, a number of amazing people from Scaled Composites who are here. But this incredible diversity of vehicles being built to go to space. The winning vehicle is now in the Smithsonian. And on the heels of that, very lucky that we've built an organization at the XPRIZE that is focused on asking the question, what problem is not yet solved? Where are governments, industries, philanthropists failing where we can launch a large-scale XPRIZE and solve that problem? I think in one sense, this Uber Elevate community and this procurement is a giant XPRIZE in itself, appropriate for Uber. We have partnered with our platform called HeroX. Boeing put up a $2 million Go Fly prize for a single person, 20-mile range VTOL capability, which I hope some of you might play in. But if you've got a great idea for an XPRIZE, I'd love to hear about it, because we'd love to do an XPRIZE in batteries or flight, or whatever the case might be. My email is just peter@xprize.org. So, final result is the implications for Uber Elevate. I think for most of us, it's buying back time. It's the ability to transform our lives and save our time. Redesigning cities, absolutely. We're living in a time where we can now think about that. How do we redesign the cities? But for me, one of the things that I'm excited about, I go to China every year. China is in its amazing growth phase of its existence. I think what follows in the decade after China is going to be the decade of India. Right? We're there right now with Virgin Hyperloop One in helping them. They have a great young populace of individuals who are smart and educated, but they don't have transportation. They need Uber Elevate. They need Hyperloop. And then the decade after that, for me, is the decade for Africa. I think Africa is going to have its shining time, but to build roads in Africa would cost trillions of dollars. But just like Africa skipped the copper line generation, it'll ultimately skip the road generation. Right? What I think was Nikhil who said, where we're going, we don't need any roads. Or was that Emmett? I forget. But the most important thing that I think Uber Elevate represents in my mind is a demonstration point, an ability to dream, to inspire. It's the notion that a single company and a single community can put a stake in the ground and say, this should exist, and this can exist. And all of you are making reality happen. An honor and a pleasure. If you'd like the slides, you can just email slides at Diamandis and you'll get them. Please share them. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I just salute all of you for the incredible work that you're doing. Thank you.